I gotta tell them all to get back in. There they are.
Can you see me?
Yeah. Hold on.
And
It's
you're
connected.
Okay.
All right. I'm starting my video. Now we need Missy. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Lauren, I'm going to hang up from you.
All right. I'm going to change my name because obviously I'm not Ashley. We had some technical difficulties, y'all. So just hold on with us. This is typical for
Lauren, turn yourself up.
Turn myself up?
Yeah.
Okay. How about now? Better?
Yeah, you sound very far away. Wait, hold on.
I can hear you all.
Oh, you can? Okay, good.
Yep, I can.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my name to not be Ashley.
Oh, Missy has to go.
She has to go.
She has a birthday party.
Oh.
Okay. I'm actually on.
Yeah, we're on. We're streaming. I'm just trying to change my name here.
Why does it keep? It's like I'm here and then I'm not.
I'm just trying to change my name here.
Why does it keep? It's like I'm here and then I'm not.
Okay, I can see us.
You can see us?
Mm-hmm.
So we're live?
I can't see anybody.
You can't see us?
Oh, Renee's gone again. There she is.
Bethany and Julie. There's Renee.
All right, we lost one of the moms in the process.
It's,
I'm afraid to even
yeah,
touch
it is what it is.
Try to touch it to make it bigger. There. Damn computer.
I see it now.
All right, we earned this one. Thank God Lauren's got skills.
Gotta love my live
nasty.
All right. So since we're live, good morning. It's not morning anymore, it's afternoon. I almost need a beer at this point. Hey, everybody, welcome to Dyslexia Coffee Talk. I'm very sorry for the delay. I fully blame the weather in Texas because we had one hell of a storm last night and computers down, no Wi-Fi until maybe 3 o'clock if we're lucky. Power went off at 10 p.m. tonight. So I'm on my phone. We've lost one of our moms because it took us forever, but we're live. So
join. Okay. I'm having Missy join from the car.
Sweet.
So she's going to join from the car. I'll let her in. Continue on.
So we've got a lot of mom shares today. We've got Lauren Taylor from our Dyslexic. Everybody, if you don't know Lauren, you need to be because she's fierce. Julie McKinley, who is one of my co-founders with the Dyslexia Initiative. Renee Harding, who is one of our leaders for Arkansas. Say hey, Renee.
Hey.
Also another fierce parent advocate. And we've got Bethany Kulig, one of our leaders for Florida, and another fierce mama bear advocate.
Hi.
Oh, there's the other one, Missy.
And we got Missy?
Yes, she's in the car driving.
Hi, guys. Thanks for letting me join from the car. I'm bombing it.
She's that committed to it.
That's right. So sorry. It's a nightmare going live. So Missy is a fierce parent from Georgia, and we all know her and love her, and so for joining us as well. So let's get started.
We're definitely live now. I'm just double checking everything.
All right. So
people are commenting.
This is open-ended. Where do y'all want to go first? Do you just start like diving in? Why are y'all here? We're all here because we're like moms that are sick of it, right?
Yeah,
We're done.
We're done.
over
And
it.
then COVID just exposed the crap out of just like everything we have to do,
Yeah,
even if our kids are in private or public.
COVID was a peek behind the curtain for most parents. It's
Yeah.
their first opportunity really to see firsthand what was going on in the schools. And I think that there's been a lot of parents who have figured out that things are not as copacetic as they once thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
That they're even
Definitely.
beyond, I mean, to the point of falsification.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it's
we-
not just that we're sending our children to be educated. We're sending our children to be educated in a criminal system.
Oh, there goes Renee.
It wasn't a curse word.
Yeah.
Renee's just gonna jump into it. Like, okay, look.
Look,
She
the money's
educated me last night.
federal government, it goes down. It might as well be a mob organization because it runs smoothly and perfectly as designed, which is not education for our children.
No.
It's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant marketing plan. Our children are tokens and chips that they trade for money.
Man.
What I find
Deep
what I
end,
find interesting in Texas is having a child with dyslexia. You not only get gen ed funds, but you get House Bill $3, and then you get, if your kid's on an IEP, you're supposed to get special ed dollars. So in theory, the school gets paid 3 times for your child for them to not provide the services that your child needs to be successful. And they certainly aren't going to provide it without a fight from a parent.
Well, and that's what I said. Once I saw the funding attached to my kids' IEPs, I realized that they were bringing in 1.5 to 2 times the amount of money of a neurotypical kid. And I have to go into these meetings and negotiate my child's education when they are, you know, the money's coming in for them like a fire hose. And, you know, I don't think that's very fair to have to drag us through that, to have to go in there and beg for things that they should be providing.
Yeah, and I wasn't even including like the Medicare dollars or Medicaid dollars that they go after if you've got a child that covers under, I guess it's Medicaid. So they can get dollars for that. So districts are getting paid multiple times for your child.
And
You
not,
can pay that money to give your kid almost the exact education as the regular ed kids. That's what I discovered during COVID.
I think it's less than. I think it's less than the education of
agreed.
it.
Yeah, I would agree. But it was shocking to me that they were even using the same resources and tools that the regular ed uses in the special ed. So there was nothing specialized about what my kid was getting to close the gap. Not at all. It was not different. And not even collecting data to monitor progress or to see if anything was working. But then showing up at meetings and saying that the child was progressing as expected. And that wasn't good enough anymore because I had seen it and I knew better. And I think what was most shocking is to go from kind of like the happy little IEP parent because you just agreed with everything to when you finally see what's going on and you ask questions, suddenly you're no longer a friend on the team. And everything gets worse. They lock down all the conversations, all the resources, kind of dig their heels in the ground to not really help your kid, but continue screaming that they're helping your kid. And that was, for me this year, was just like COVID blew that off the top.
That was like,
I thought they were
that was like the biggest annoying thing for me this year was like triaging.
hundreds of parents.
Well, there's that. No, but triaging just the district that she's in specifically because I grew up there. And for me to tie back to that district was like from my youth with my sister dealing with that and then meeting Missy randomly in a parking lot that I went to, like that school. And then just how defiant and rude they were to Missy. And like, she's like the sweetest mom in the world. So when I say, like, when people are all like, you know, just be nice, work with them, like, you can work with them till you're blue in the face. But as Missy experienced this year, they literally are just going to dangle a carrot in front of your face and hope you stay oh so compliant. But the moment you trigger or you use any of your parental procedural safeguards, they start to act a whole hot mess. And so they went from like lying to Missy to like, it was just sad, because then they actually started printing off like state and federal regulations. I'm like, and they're like holding it up in my face, like, we know you love these. I'm like, that's not to protect me. That's for you. You should know this. What are you doing? And they weren't even like providing Missy with like her procedural safeguards. They were like, oh, did you get the parental handbook? I'm like, but yeah, they turned on Missy like quickly. But I came to find out, regardless of Missy or any other parent in Gwinnett County, that's just how they behave. Like, if you get loud, they just, you know, they're like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to stack the table, stack the deck, and we're going to make it miserable.
Yep. And in my case, this is where the final straw is for me, because for several years, I have been trying to work with my district. I went in and we had a focus group, and we developed a toolkit, and we gave input, and it was almost like they were just doing it to keep us, you know, tossing us a bone, I'll say. But even with my son last year, I went in and I couldn't get the accommodations that were in the toolkit that I helped create for him. I went so far as to try to really rally to get a Orton Gillingham scholarship for a teacher at his school, and she went to the training, and she took it a whole week over the summer and came back, and they still wouldn't help him. I'm like, I've done everything I can to try to work with you and create win-win situations. I've painted floats, I've sewed costumes, I've printed out flyers, I've baked you cookies, I held teacher appreciation meals, I got you scholarships, I created a toolkit, and they still tell me no. I mean, one of the things I asked for is free through a state grant. I asked for a Learning Ally account, and they were like, no. You know, in the first meeting, it took me a couple meetings just to even get that, you know.
Somebody in the chat's already talking about lawyers, to sue the district for lawyers. So can I just touch on that real quick? I do want to bring that up, because that was something that I got bashed with. Like, I got to turn this off. So I'm so sorry. This keeps happening with my camera, y'all. I'll figure it out in a second. So I was like routinely like tagged on social media from like March of 2020, all the way out to like October, when we finally just were like, so yeah, what kept happening in my case is that attorneys who had not yet been inside these virtual settings or virtual IEPs or any of that, right? Like, they kept tagging me and engaging in conversations or trying to fight with me and all of these things. And my advice about attorneys, just speaking from experience with attorneys, make sure they know how to file complaints. Make sure they know how to maneuver due process, by the way. Don't hire an attorney that hasn't either done that, been there, done that, and won that. Because what I found out through the course of this year with attorneys was they were really quick to jump in there, but they're like, oh, we're going to work with the district. I'm going to get you an IEP. I literally have at least 10 parents I know now that took the course of an attorney that didn't get anything. And if anything, they exited the school year with maybe a 504. And they spent all that money with an attorney all year long. And I'm like, if they don't have the credentials to back it up, don't just jump to an attorney. You need to start screening these people as if you're interviewing them, not the other way around. Like, you as the parent need to interview the attorney. and you need to interview whatever parent or whatever advocate you're actually giving money to. Make sure they know what they're doing. Because that's what I learned during COVID, was that there was a whole bunch of people tagging me in and trying to engage in fights. And then come to find out at the end of the year, I'm like, how'd that work for you? No offense. I'm not naming names, but it was just like, it was the unneeded things. And I know a lot of parents that got taken advantage of, and it just drives me insane. So that was a question in here about, oh yeah. And then Tina brought that up. And can they argue tolling? Make sure you ask, if you hire an attorney, ask if they can argue tolling, and ask them if they even know what tolling is. So there's that one. I'll leave that alone. Sorry, I just saw that in the comments. I was like, no, you don't just jump to attorneys.
Well, and it's not that simple either. I mean, I wish it were. A lot of people think it's, oh, just, get a tutor. And yeah, get just homeschool or go to a private school or just get an advocate or an attorney. And they don't realize that, most of us have tried all of those things and it didn't matter. It didn't matter.
We need people to understand this isn't about giving our kids one resource or one thing out of a toolkit, that they need a systematic approach to educating them in all content areas to help them be successful. And they need someone who understands what dyslexia is. They need someone who understands why they are having struggles, because they have been educated to understand the disability. It's not just about one tool. Like, we have some tools at our school, but they're just throwing like a side order of those at our kids and then making them do everything else as if they don't have a disability. And it's that understanding our whole kid and helping support that, and not just throwing Band-Aids at them either. Like, oh, here's AT. I'm not going to teach you how to use it. I'm not going to reinforce it ever, but you've got access to it if you choose to use it. Like, making it a real part of their educational experience, walking them through how all the things that they have at their access will actually help them be successful. And I didn't understand that until I started seeing how segmented it was this year. Oh, over here you get, 20 or 25 minutes of Wilson, and then you get an hour of no Wilson, like LLI. And then you get, here's a computer, but no one's going to teach you how to use it. You can't type. Your typing speed and your writing speed are the same, so there's a systematic just lack of understanding. These teachers aren't being taught to understand. The system is kind of looking for Band-Aids that they're throwing out there, and they're hoping that nobody figures it out. And then if you figure it out, they're going to double down and keep doing more of the same and hope you'll go away, because they're going to get really unhelpful in all of your IEP meetings. And that was my experience this year. I was like you, Bethany. I was the room mom and the event coordinator, and show up to meetings with brownies in hand and all the things, and it didn't get me very far. And I will say this, there are some people, I know this isn't true of everybody, but there are some people in these systems who get it and they want to help, but they're also handicapped in the sense that no one will give them access to that OG training that you're talking about, or the understanding of the whole kid and what they need. And it's frustrating for everybody involved because they want to help, but the district won't let them help.
That's exactly right. And, even when I've gone to the district and sat in meetings, because I've done that too, I've sat in the ESE meetings over at the Educational Services Facility, and, and they give their little speeches and they're like, well, you catch more flies with honey. And I think to myself, I'm going to be really candid here. Like, if you have a pile of crap and you dump a gallon of honey on it, it's still a pile of crap, it's just stickier. I mean, it's just, they don't, I've used honey. I've used sugar. I've kicked them in the shins and ran. I mean, I've tried everything and nothing worked. So.
But here's the thing that drives me nuts as a parent, but especially drives me nuts as an advocate, as I talk to parents across, not just Texas, but all of the other states as well, right? Because, being a friend of Lauren, I've learned a lot about what's going on in Georgia. Being your friend, Bethany, I've been starting to learn a lot about what's going on in Florida. May and Molly learning a lot about what's going on in Arkansas. I'm hearing the same story from parents across the country.
It's the same story over and over and over.
Is we are painted as, number one, we don't have an education. We don't know what we're talking about. And then it's that we're that parent, we're hostile, we're difficult, we're, you know, it's always that the parent has this Everest mountain that they have to climb in order to be taken seriously or something. When you're sitting here going, my kid is drowning, all of this empirical evidence exists. Why am I the bad guy? That's the thing that I find frustrating, is sitting across all of these meetings, all of these people who are gaslighting and intimidating and intentionally attempting to bully me. And I'm sitting there going, I'm not the bad guy here. Why are you trying to paint me in this light? That's what infuriates me to absolutely no end, is, you know, then I'm attacked from, I'm anti-teacher. I'm not anti-teacher. I'm very pro-teacher, but I'm always getting painted as the bad guy here, and you're wanting me to be anti. So, you know, there's two absolutely sides, and I think that the parents are 100% on the side of with the exception of like the bad apple. You know, we all have them. You know, there's been a teacher, at least in all of our kids' lives, who have verbally or mentally abused our children. They're the bad apples. We're not talking about them, but we're talking about the system. Parents are the bad guys, and it's got to stop being. Sorry, that's.
No, it's okay. I mean, like, even last night, sidebar. Well, it goes along with this. So again, ties back to my sister, right? We were having a like casual conversation on the couch about education. So my mom, being the person that took on Gwinnett County when I was a kid, you know, we were talking about, like, because my husband said, you know, it's not just teachers. It's not like they want to hurt kids or they don't have the resources. So we started having that conversation. And it was just really funny because my mom just snapped. She's like, it doesn't matter. She's like, do your job. You're a teacher. Like, you don't, why do you get the option to just say you don't want to learn? You're a teacher. You're supposed to want to learn to keep helping your students. So if my 70-something-year-old mom can resonate with that, right? It doesn't make me feel like I'm that far gone, but it just shows that this has been going on for that long, because my sister's 40, right? And so the whole thing, it keeps going. And my mom just like detailed the whole experience with my sister in these great schools and what they would say to her, what they would do to her. And like, they would make fun of her to her face, and they would literally just drag her in front of her peers, all of these things. And, you know, here's my mom fighting, like, at the time, the best school district in the country. And they didn't care. My mom was like literally showing them the roadmap on how to help all of these kids. And they didn't care. It just kept happening. And she was just like, you know, so that to me is something that I have teachers all in my family. My family is embedded with teachers, SLPs, heads of special education, you name it. So and scholars, I adore teachers. What I don't endorse or what I don't enjoy, I don't enjoy having the same conversation over and over again. And rinse repeat cycle. And somebody looking at me in the camera or in a meeting going, we don't do that here. Or, I don't know, we don't have those resources. We have this.
Resources. Yeah, this too.
So to me, it's just like, even when I ask questions for my own child, not like this was prior to me going to where we're at now, I would always ask them, like, well, are you trained to work with my child? No. Right? I'm like, are you trained? Well, I mean, I took the class. I'm like, okay, that's not what I asked. Are you trained to work with my child? And, you know, I was always that parent. I wasn't like y'all. I was the parent bringing in all the handouts, right?
I did that too. I mean, I sat at conferences. I've printed out handouts. I mean, I've had teachers come by and take them and I've done the the dyslexia, what's it called? Simulation, the dyslexia simulation for teachers at the district at a conference. They have breakout sessions. I've seen the teachers in there, and they don't ever take any of it back to their school. I mean, this is 1 in 5. It's 20% of the population. It's 80% of the kids who have disabilities, and you are not interested in any.
I'm a former teacher. I'm a former teacher from my district. I am a teacher. I taught for 10 years in the district. I did not get any education in my university program on what dyslexia was. There was one day where they mentioned it in my special ed overview class, but no one taught me how to look for red flags or to help a child, nor did they give me any resources. And even as a former teacher in meetings advocating for my child and for others, I'm not taken seriously. I'm not taken as an expert. So even walking into those meetings with the same degrees as the people at that table in the same district, there's a presumption they know more than me and that I don't know what I'm talking about.
That's exactly right.
So even that does not help.
Until someone brings up balanced literacy.
You know,
I was going to say, you fail at the tier 1.
Well, then I do know a lot about that.
So when you bring up balanced literacy or LLI, just FYI, this one over here, Missy, like I just usually shut my camera off and turn my mic off because like she has like an out of body experience. And for like the next 30 minutes, if you don't know anything about balanced literacy or LLI or why it's bad for our kids and just kids in general, you're going to learn really quick. And if you don't listen to her, she's going to keep going until you do. She's like, oh, did I say that? I'm like, yes, you did. And
then I might send you a follow-up resource.
Yeah.
Well, here's the
resources. You know, I've dumped resources into my district. I've been over there. They have all of these programs sitting on the shelf collecting dust. I know they have like Barton and Linda Mood Bell products and everything. They have Matthew C. I saw it. I sat in that focus group. They presented Nessie to us. They presented Max Scholar to us. And as soon as that focus group was over and we created that toolkit, they turned around and spent $5 million on another program, which I don't know if I should say the name of, but it's a computerized program and every district uses it. So, you know, that's
like that iStation iReady argument.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Here's the fun fact about dyslexia is we've only known about it since 1887. So it's been a relatively new phenomenon for schools to, you know, learn about and invest some training and time into.
Child development is a new process too.
Do what?
The whole child development thing.
Yeah.
Whole new concept. We've never known anything about learning or science or the scientific process because science doesn't apply to education.
Or IXL or Dreambox or I could just list off all the things they like to toss at our kids. I'm like, really? Like, how are you taking the data on that one? Where's the data? So I did want to bring that up. Yes, so here's the thing. All parents watching this, by the way, and Renee's going to he'll come in and swinging, and so will Missy on this as well. I guess with me, it's just like I'm like a natural hoarder of things. And so when I started this process, I was like, something in my gut said, don't throw anything away and keep everything in writing. If you're a new parent getting into this, I can't tell you enough. Like, I can't emphasize this enough. Keep every single piece of work that comes home. Now, all the classwork samples, the graded classwork, keep all the emails, make sure you keep the teachers in emails versus unsolicited phone calls. You know, make sure that, you know, if they do call you, I mean, in some states like Georgia, it's a one-party consent state. You can record the phone conversation. I'm not telling every parent to be that savage, obviously, but I am going to say that if it weren't for data, a lot of our children, or if it weren't for proof, and hard proof from, oh, look at Bethany bringing out her binders. So the reason that we have to hoard the data is in the event we go into a situation where we have to file a complaint or, God forbid, go to like due process or something or mediation. We have to have all of that information to back it up. And, you know, I always want parents to have that information or that data to go back to fall back on, to make sure that they knew that even though they were being taught down in this setting, or they were being told one thing, they had the power in that meeting because they had the binders, they had the data. Or even me, I have the data going all the way back to pre-K. Even before that, I saved everything. And, you know, that's something that I know all the ladies on here are big about with the data. But that's like the biggest thing I do want new parents to know who are coming into this world of their kid being diagnosed. Keep all the data. I know it seems tedious and annoying, but it will save you. It will, you know, if you start filing complaints in the event you do have to take the route of getting an attorney, all of that's going to be relevant.
Proof to parent.
I think it's important for you to know what the statute of limitations is.
Oh, yeah, statute of limitations in your state. Yeah. So Georgia, it's 2 years. You have 2 years.
Texas is 1. And the goal is to delay you and deny you and delay you and deny you until that 1 year expires.
Well, that's actually illegal, but yeah.
But bear in mind that there is.
But they do it nicely. They do it nicely.
I know.
We've got to do some additional testing.
But bear in mind with the Texas legislature that there is a law. I mean, so the Texas legislative session ends on Monday at midnight. Monday to Tuesday morning. There is a law that's been working its way through the legislature to extend Texas from 1 year to 2 to align with the federal requirement of 2. But
actually starting in 2022.
Right. But I don't know where it is right now. I want to say it passed the Senate, but I
think it may have passed the Senate, but I think it's effective. Like, it's not retroactive. I think it goes into effect in like 2022. But my point is that statute of limitations is very important, because I do think that there is a certain level of denial that will happen along that way, because a year is a very short amount of time, and the time frames to get testing and stuff done. 45 days. Well, we need to look at the 45 days. We need to do this. We need to do our own whatever. And then by the time you add in like an IEE, if you don't agree with their work, I mean, your statute of limitations is, it's not just running, it's galloping.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to be very diligent to go through date by date by date, line by line, the documentation to find anything that allows you to extend that statute of limitations to allow you to go back farther in time.
That's the tolling.
Yep.
So if you have something from like, I don't know, kindergarten, where they're red flagging your kid saying, oh, well, we're noticing maybe they need to go into EIP because of phonological processing or written expression. That's how you start the argument of tolling, because the district and or the school have already done the job for you by identifying your child but refusing to do anything about it.
Yep.
So that's how you start tolling.
That child has a disability, and they were nice enough to document it for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it when they document nicely, especially with the misspellings and grammar that they ding our children on later.
Right. But then the flip side of that is you could exist in districts destroy data.
You can what?
Districts like mine where they destroy data.
No, that's awful.
You have to ask for those things along the way.
Yep.
And before you tip them off that you're collecting those people's data, because otherwise the data that comes home in their request doesn't match what you've gathered along the way.
It's the fifth iteration, the fifth revision of something rather than the first revision. So your underlying disability now gets masked by edit revisions. And
the Matthew effect that takes effect over tolling.
Yeah.
I
So
can't tell if Missy froze or
Oh, Missy's
I don't know.
freezing.
That face is everything. I wish you could see it. I need to take a screenshot and let her see it.
Oh, we love you, Lauren. You're the best.
I'm so nice, aren't I?
So
Whatever. Hold on. She's
just for
back.
okay, Renee, for everybody, just explain what the Matthew effect is.
The Matthew effect is where, for example, a child comes in with a certain cognitive level, a certain, say, profile of strengths and weaknesses. And the district, say, suspects that child has disabilities, but does not identify those disabilities and therefore does not serve those disabilities. Those deficits keep the child from accessing the content that neurotypical children are accessing. And so that prevents the child from acquiring new vocabulary and new skills that the other neurotypical children are acquiring through their normal development. And so as time progresses, their peers continue to progress along the regular curriculum. They are deprived, so therefore their cognitive stimulation doesn't occur, so their IQ actually decreases. And eventually those are the kids that started off with the potential to achieve what their peers did, but because of the lack of services, they end up being parked in sort of what is the fear factor they're using in Texas now, which is the SPED is a place, and they get parked in the you're dumb and you don't deserve to learn because you never had the ability to learn to begin with.
And that's when you start looking at like the IQ, you know.
Right.
So here's the other fun thing that I find districts doing. So if you've got a kid who's twice exceptional, right? So their IQ is 130, let's say I think it's like 127, 120, whatever, 130, that range. So but their scoring tests at average, right? So they'll take a score of a one, say it's a 100 or a 200 score test. So they'll take a test of 150, and then they'll take another score of 50, add them together, divide by 2, and all of a sudden your kid's average, and they're not providing you the sub tests that show those patterns of strengths and weaknesses.
Which averages across the highs and the lows.
Yeah. And then they don't compare it to IQ. So you don't see, they're like, oh, well then, because the some of the testing will show that the IQ, when you start averaging it out, even though the kid on other tests will show high, when you start averaging it down, then that starts getting to average. But when you really look, when you dig in, they're really not average, and they should be performing at a higher standard. But always get, when you're having testing done, make sure that they're showing you the subtests and how they're scoring on the subtests, because they like to present you with one little number on a page and tell you your kid's average. And that is not the case.
But that's a good, I was just talking to a parent last week who, they're denying the IEP for the child because they said that all of the scores fall within the average range. And I can't remember which score it was, but the mom shared it with me, and the score was the composite score, mind you. So this isn't even all of the subtests. For this particular test, the composite score was an 85.
Which is not average.
That's within the average range. And I went, what's the child's IQ? She said 117. I said, then 85 is an average. 85 below average. They're, more than one standard deviation below at that point. There's no.
But that depends too then on if you're stating a deficit model or not.
Right.
So are you using a deficit model, or are you using a pattern of strengths or weaknesses? Right. And a district can use more than one model too. And they won't tell you what model they're using when they go through and make their decision and their determination.
Well, and I find the deficit model interesting because even Seidenberg says it's a crap model to use.
It is.
It is a crap model to use because children who are intellectually disabled are capable of learning unless their cognitive profile is so low that they're at the point where their brains are truly missing neurological pathways that account for the reading ability.
Right.
That was brought up by Nadine Gabb.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is the only time that it cannot happen.
Right.
And that's a morphological reason. That has nothing to do with the cognitive ability.
And then when the Matthew effect starts going into play, when you have a kid who would otherwise test with a high IQ over time, they are going to trend now back down to that average that they've been calling out this whole time. So your kid's lost potential.
A lot of IQ tests take into consideration planning. Executive functioning lights up throughout the reading process. So if you have an executive function disorder, then that suppresses your scores. If you have an expressive language delay, that further suppresses your scores. And so a lot of these schools are doing, they're doing cognitive tests or IQ tests that take those into effect, which are not valid IQ tests for our kids, like dyslexics, who tend to have expressive delays. So it's not, and if we're taking them to a private provider who understands that piece and understands that there's an underlying language-based learning disability, then they're going to know to look at IQ tests that allow for examining their nonverbal intelligence as well, because those are two different pieces. And you have to be able to pull one apart from the other to know if the language is the piece that's making their IQ go down, or if they truly have a low IQ. Because these kids, like the ones you're talking about, Julie, have, like my child had spatial strength, like his spatial IQ is like 117, but his verbal IQ is below 100. So he appears to have an average IQ, but but the examiner stopped the block test because he had ceilinged out. So it appears as if my child is just a normal average child. But he can't, but his writing skills demonstrate that the thoughts that are going together in his head cannot make it out on paper. And if I were to listen to him tell me a paragraph orally, it's a complex paragraph. If he were to write that on paper, it would basically be a series of words.
And that's my son. Like my son has oral language skills in the 95th percentile. I mean, he has better vocabulary than anyone in my family. But it's not coming out on paper. I mean, if I let him dictate stuff, he can go on for hours, but, trying to write it or even type it, because nobody ever taught him to really type either.
Exactly.
And we get into that because they also, they're not really even teaching writing anymore. They're not teaching penmanship. They're not teaching cursive. They're not teaching those things that build those cognitive skills that they need in order to.
None of the spelling, none of the orthographic mapping. They don't teach any of those things that allow them to have the fluency of thought, to have the fluency of written expression, and they don't teach them the organization of writing for the different genres. They have no idea. I mean, the things that I was taught to do in junior high are now being taught to English graduate students. They have removed so much content from schools now that for us was just, to give you an idea, I'm 50. So to give you an idea of, so back in the 80s, we actually, were taught how to do those things. So when I went to college, I just sat down and wrote.
Right.
Right? There was no basic English where they teach you how to, you know, read an encyclopedia. That was elementary school.
Right. But the inverse of that too is there are college level skills that are being inappropriately placed in elementary curriculums when they're not teaching anything to begin with. I sat in one of my sons, so I think I'm 47. I'm trying to remember how old I am. I'm kidding. I'm 47. So, and my undergraduate is English. And I got my undergraduate English degree from one of the top 3 English programs in the entire country. Because I was an English major, I had to study deconstruction, which, to explain deconstruction to anybody who doesn't know what deconstruction is, it's taking the story beyond the surface of the story. So the easiest example I can give is like the Lord of the Rings. You know, it seems like elves, hobbits, and humans are joined together to fight the big bad, right? So if you deconstruct the story, then you say that the big bad is Hitler and they're all fighting against the Nazi movement and the Holocaust, what was happening to the Jewish population. And, you know, each of the humans represented so-and-so, and the dwarves represented so-and-so. It's taking the story beyond the story and taking the socioeconomic factors, history, what's actually going on culturally, etc. And it's taking the story apart and saying what it really means. That's what deconstruction is. So I remember
fancy. That's fancy.
A fancy term.
Yes. I just call it dysgraphia. But that's okay. Continue on.
So I actually hated doing it because I really liked stories and I didn't want to be tearing apart the stories that I loved reading so much and to try to figure out all of the elements behind the story in order to make an A on my paper, right? But I sat in an IEP meeting with my son at the beginning of 5th grade, finished 6th grade now, and he came home and he had an assignment that was deconstruction. And I went into the IEP meeting with the assignment. And I just asked him a whole bunch of questions about it, playing dumb as I like to do to try to get the answers that I'm seeking. And they all answered my questions the way I went. And I went, why are you teaching deconstruction in 5th grade? It's college level material. You don't teach deconstruction until you're in college. What is going on here? This is 5th grade. Yeah. And they all agreed with me that it was educationally inappropriate for elementary school children, but it was part of their curriculum, so they didn't have a choice. They had to do it. So,
algebraic thought. Actual algebra equations in 2nd grade with X's and Y's.
Yep.
What?
Yep.
Yes, we did talk about that yesterday too, is that they want kids in 1st grade to master algebraic thinking.
Yeah.
I remember this in 1st grade. I'm like, why is my child coming home learning algebraic thinking? And he doesn't have sight words or CVCC. Like, he doesn't have any of that. I'm like, what are you teaching these kids? Like, I'm all for it, but at the same time, I'm like, they don't even have the basics.
But when we did that in school, they gave us that foundation when they said box plus 1 equals 3. 2 plus 1 equals 3. They didn't introduce us to the abstract thought of placing a letter X. Now looking back, when I was a teaching assistant in algebra, I can point out every dyslexic and dyscalculic I had in my freshman algebra classes. Because they were like, why would we use an X? And I was like, why wouldn't we use an X? But they were thinking, it's a letter. What the hell's a letter doing on there? Right? Yeah. Because it's because it's abstract, because kids need an actual concrete, like it would make more sense to give them a cube or a marker and say, Okay, this plus, and then actually give them 1 manipulative equals to 3 manipulatives. And ask them what goes in this box.
Right.
But instead, they put a freaking X in there.
Yeah.
So we have, hold on, I'm just like spinning off that because somebody asked like how many of our kids are in public.
Yeah, I want to address that too.
Raised my hand. Mine has.
So I'm
in private.
Yeah, I'm answering it, and you know, to that, I'm also going to speak on it as well. So just FYI, like my kid was in public school from pre-K all the way to 4th grade, even COVID school. So it's not like, I mean, I had my child diagnosed by kindergarten, flagged, everything. He had an IEP, he had Orton Gillingham. Yes, my child was able to do what a lot of children aren't able to do, right? Because he was gifted Orton Gillingham within the public school setting. So due to my advocating and my fighting, yeah, my kid could read. He left public school reading, but he's also extremely dysgraphic. He has an IQ that, you know, pissed off the evaluator because she was like, this makes no sense. If his IQ is up here, why is his dysgraphia all the way? He's literally at below 2nd grade level with his dysgraphia and written expression and all, right?
Fine.
So again, so for people watching, I pulled the trigger because I was actually going to fight this fight in public school. I was going to make it right. I'm pretty sure every mom on this call has said that at some point, that we weren't going to pull our kid. We were going to keep him in public. We were going to burn the whole thing down. We were going to fix it in public. Unfortunately, and this is where I know that Renee is the same way, as is Bethany. All of us were like this. But with me, it's like I had to make the call because, not because my kid couldn't read, but because my child's self-esteem, his mental health, his safety, his everything was at risk. I had to make the call based off of a series of events that I could no longer control, meaning I did not feel safe with my son in school. I felt more safe with a complete stranger watching my toddler than my child in school. And as a parent that had to go through all of that with their own sibling and then watch the same events play out with their child, I had to make the call, as did my husband and I, we had a conversation. We had to make the call. We had to do something. We had to fix it because I was not willing to just sacrifice my child. And, you know, with me, in my case, it was crippling panic attacks, anxiety attacks constantly. It was trauma. All of this was induced inside the school setting. And, you know, what I've come to find out through the course of meeting all these amazing women and then working with all of these parents and all of these babies is that my child isn't the only one that suffers from the very same thing. Every single kid I've come across this year, COVID or not, because these things were, once we ripped the Band-Aid off, it came pouring out. And what all it took was asking a kid, can you look your teacher in the eye? That's the only question I'll ask, right? And every single one of the kids, they don't like looking their teachers in the eye. And they bob and they weave and they don't want to try and get out of eye contact and all of those things. So, you know, again, I want to make this right for public school, but I do want to say to parents that have children in public school that may have a profile of you know, you've got anxiety in the family or you've got OCD in any of that, right? Our children are so empathetic. Our children are just, they take everything in. They read your face. They read your the tone in your voice, the smile. It sets the course of the day for them. So we as parents have to triage their everything when they get home. And I truly mean that because as soon as they get in the car, they lose it.
Yeah,
and
that restraint collapse, right?
It just comes out. Yeah. So me making the choice was solely based off of, I knew I could probably get the dysgraphia taken care of, but I needed my child. I wanted my baby. I wanted him to come home to me. I wanted him back. And I wanted to see him smile again. And I wanted him to be happy. And that was the course that my husband and I had to choose, because our son was gone. Like, we hadn't seen that smile and that kid in years. And, you know, again, like I've grown up in a family full of dyslexic, and I know what it does. And I wasn't willing to make my child the sacrificial lamb like it's happened with so many other people. You know, I'm not telling everybody to leave public school or just abandon it, because God, that was the last thing I wanted to do. It literally took numerous people holding my hand, begging me to leave. Like, you're done. You've done everything you can do. You've done it. Like, just, you got to go. And finally I was like, okay, fine. And I did. But I don't want people to think that, like, we all just rush to private. We don't do that. Like, all of us have fought to keep it in public and to make sure our kids were serviced properly. But when it comes to their mental health, when it comes to the statistics attached to our children, when it comes to the incarceration rate, the drug abuse rate, suicide rate, all of that, we as parents or as mothers don't have a lot of time. Between 8 and 12 are the scariest years for our kids. And we have to triage that at a very early age, which a lot of people don't realize. And, you know, what COVID did help expose was panic attacks. Parents were calling me, what is this? What is this? What do I do? I'm like, that's a panic attack. You need to just hold their hand, talk very low and monotone, and just let them get through it, but just don't escalate it. Don't freak out in front of them. So it's like I've been triaging panic attacks in kids and parents all COVID and even pre-COVID. But again, that's me. I always speak on the mental health part because it rings so true. And I've lost so many friends. Like, literally, I've lost more friends than I can count. And either to incarceration, suicide, overdose, you name it. Every single one of those friends had all the red flags for dyslexia. Every single one of them had been kicked out or expelled from school. Their family had disowned them, all of the things, because the community was shaming mom and dad about their kids' behavior. And it's just a system that I've watched. And I wasn't willing to allow my son to be a part of that pool, because I wanted to break that cycle.
And I'll just, oh, go ahead, Julie.
I was going to say, you said something very important there, Lauren. One of the things that do is dyslexia, dysgraphia, all these things come out some way as behavior. And so they'll try to pin it on behavior rather than the actual condition that is causing the behavior. So they'll, you know, it's the manifestation of the disability. Correct. Is really what it is. And you have to watch the district, because they'll try to pin it on something else to avoid the responsibility of remediating the child.
And I'm just going to piggyback on Lauren, because my son is now safely tucked away in a private school, wonderful school, a little oasis, peaceful place that it's taken me almost a year to let my guard down with them and trust them with my child. And I fought long and hard for both my kids. My oldest child is 20. She graduated from public school. I moved around and I figured out how to make sure we did everything that was strengths-based. She was good at performing arts, so I made sure that we applied to performing arts magnet programs and make sure that those things were highlighted first. And then for my son, you know, she reached her senior year when he went into that third grade year, which is, you know, we all know that third grade year is the year that everything matters. And you know, and then the calls start coming in about him. He's struggling, and I'm going in and I'm getting these things, and we're getting evaluations, and I got the IEE. The district paid for it. They paid a lot of money for his IEE, and it came back with SLD, dyslexia and dysgraphia, It also has some language issues going on there, and they still refuse to help him. I mean, and I told you, I've done everything I know how to do to work with the district. There was just not one more. I mean, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. You know, we just had to go.
It's hard to determine which is it. Is it skill or is it will on the part of the district, right? That's the question. Is it skill or is it will? Because they either don't know, they don't have the resources, or they won't know and they won't have the resources.
It's both. It's always both, because they're always going to cut the resources as close as they can possibly cut them. And they're never truly as informed as they need to be, because they're going to cut corners with training too.
Right. Well, and as we all know, dyslexia does not look the same on every person. So Lauren's kid might have done great with take flight, whereas maybe mine needed something like, I'm just making things up.
Like,
Whereas mine might do better with like Linda Mood Bell. Right. But they want a one package at all and say, this is the package that the school district delivers. And I'm so sorry if your kid doesn't make progress. And this is all we offer. And too bad.
Which is why IDEA has appropriate, right? And they all say, I mean, I was in an IEP meeting recently where the SPED director dared say, we have the privilege to choose the curriculum. No, ma'am. IDEA provides, IDEA mandates that you choose the appropriate individualized curriculum for this child who has made no gains in 3 years under your watch.
Right.
They don't even care about that. I mean, y'all saw that. We filed that complaint in Georgia for OSERS and OSEP, and like the ruling, you know, or not the ruling, but the verbiage, right? Once a child has been identified with an SLD in reading, when it comes down to what type of curriculum that the child must be afforded.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't even matter that OSERS and OSEP has that in there, right? Because you have federal, then you have state, and you have what, like, right? So every state is allowed to interpret that piece, right? And then it's really infuriating when you're in a state like mine or like yours, Renee, where we have dyslexia manuals. And you know, Texas, you know, everybody based their manual off Texas, right? Except Georgia didn't use the word developmental. We didn't use the word developmental dyslexia, which is still mind-boggling to me. But regardless, when we have manuals for our state and we're filing complaints based off of OSERS and OSEP, then we take it down to the state level, right? And we bump it up against what our own state manual says. The state still won't rule against it. I'm like, okay. And the mama's not on here, so I'm not going to steal her thunder, but I'm just going to say the only way we got that complaint, it was not for OSERS and OSEP. It was a technicality and a procedural safeguard that they screwed up on, and she argued 19 pages worth of all of it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Exactly. Because, I mean, and one thing we're finding is the state guidance isn't in compliance with IDEA.
Exactly. They don't care.
We don't even have a handbook here. I mean, we finally got some laws on the book with HB 7069 back in 2017 that was signed, and the teachers are supposed to have, I think it's 2 credits in dyslexia and multisensory structured literacy training upon their renewals by July 1st, 2020.
Yeah, but who watches over that?
Yeah, that's the question.
I mean,
it's the fox watching the hen house.
Right.
It is, you know, like, okay, so I think everybody knows the fight that we've been in here within the state. And I can't say a whole lot because it's still sort of being worked. And until Monday at midnight, there's only so much that I can say. But you know, Tuesday is going to be a lot of fun because I'm going to be very truthful. But how the stakes are stacked against our kids here is absolutely mind-blowing, because Dyslexia, which is a real term here, was created in 1985 because special education at that time was a place. It wasn't a service. For my age, Julie's age, we remember growing up in schools where special education was a place. You know, it was on the other side of the building, and the special education kids never left that place. And you know, it was
self-contained.
Right.
Yeah, self-contained. I mean, it was in every state. I had it too. Like,
or just that's a black hole, right?
It's still like that here. I mean,
they still have that here.
Yeah.
The resource room is often a trailer.
Yeah. But, and my school has resource rooms as well. But the point is that we can't get our kids protected under IDEA because people are still so convinced that special education is a place and not a service.
Right.
There was this really great tweet that I retweeted the other day. It was a special education teacher that wrote it. Said, there are no special education students. There are general education students with special education protection. That's not the same thing. And I thought that was so beautifully said. And I'm sitting here, you know, in the middle of this battle that we're going here legislatively, going, special education is not a place. You keep insisting that it is, and so you insist on denying our their legal protection under IDEA, because in 36 years it hasn't changed because you don't understand the current law, and I have an issue with that.
Yes,
they don't want to understand the current
no, law. I mean, it's in the United States has the Prussian model of education. It's just, you know, comply, do as you're told, stay at grade level, do your homework, ignore inequity, be a rule follower, and then, you know, with the teachers, then they become the teachers who don't stand up for the kids, and the principals who don't support the teachers who do stand up for the kids, and the admins who push the principals to do things, you know, wrong for the kids, and, you know, their personal morality and ethics. It needs to be their guide, and that's their responsibility to our kids, and I think that matters more. But you know, we're still in that archaic, you know, model.
It is, and I completely agree. You know, they're allegedly in my district, we've never been able to put our hands on it, but there's supposed to be an unpublished policy that if the teachers call out to a parent that they believe that their child is dyslexic, that the teacher faces immediate. And again, we've never been able to put our hands on it. Supposed to be an unpublished policy, a secret rule within the district, right? Mm-hmm. For the record, my child is in public school. He has been since second grade. We started off in private school. We switched to public, thinking that IDEA would protect, finding out that was its problem. But, and he's still in public school, seventh grade. He's about to start seventh grade. But to a point that Julie made a little bit ago, how similar and different our children. My children, or my child, is a lot like Renee's, and also a lot, but he emanates differently. He's still a source of trauma to him. He's always loved his teachers. He finds school extremely boring. He's got 117 IQ, and his written expression at the first grade level, because nobody wants to teach written expression anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I don't know. And I've kind of forgotten what my point at this juncture, but I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning. I find all of this extremely, because what we're asking for isn't ridiculous, isn't hard. If you taught all of our children through the science of reading, most of our children
wouldn't need the special education help.
And 95%, what is it? 95% of kids have the ability to learn how to read if you teach them appropriately.
Right.
You know, and now we're at what, 80% of the prison inmates are functionally illiterate, and you know, what 40% of those are dyslexic, and we're just doing the same
5% in Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost
Yeah.
55,
I think, in Texas. And the other argument that schools will like to use against you is when you go in, you know, Bethany talking about your kid, it's like, oh, well, you know, little Johnny, you know, he's compared with his peers are doing this. They like to throw in the peers. Well, when you're talking IDEA, we're talking about an individualized child. We're not talking about what all of his peers are doing. But I actually had somebody tell me the other day that, 30% of the students in my son's class couldn't punctuate and capitalize. Right. And they were okay with that. And then at that point, I said, well, that's a failure of the education system to all those children. So why is it acceptable for, you know, this 30% failure? Why? And so they'll try to norm against peers, but you can't norm against peers. You got to norm against yourself. You got to norm against your own child. Your child norms against himself. Your child norms against his own IQ, not his peers' IQ or his peers' capabilities.
But because of that, they believe, and I know you're experiencing this, Julie, and I know this isn't just Texas, right? What I found after fighting for my son's educational rights is they truly believe that just because he's dyslexic, that he'll never learn to read above a 4th grade level. It's like this automatic, oh, well, he's dyslexic, he just can't, and he absolutely never will. And I'm sitting here going, and it was a while before I figured out that was a core belief. And I'm not saying that the teachers believe it, but the district absolutely believes it. And it's a fundamental they seem to push down. And I was dumbfounded by that. And I started using very specific examples of people who knew who were highly successful, who could read on, you know, a postgraduate level. They're considered expert readers at this point because they were properly remediated. And I'm sitting here going, why are grade level expectations an inappropriate goal? I don't understand your logic. You need to explain it to me. And they've never been able to, not once.
What they consider grade level, like what I've just recently learned is grade level. For example, like in Arkansas, we use the MAP scores as the indicator. Grade level is at the 40th percentile. And you know that if they haven't reached at the bare minimum the 50th percentile by the end of 1st grade, they're unlikely to be reading on the level they need to be college ready.
Right.
So, I mean, so we've got children, obviously, who are on the basic level. I mean, so I was floored. I had no idea. It's not like the districts, you know, will tell you that. They won't even tell you what grade level your child is on.
Yeah.
They're trying to pull your, like, one of the things like is given is growth. It's like fall to fall growth or whatever. So it showed 58% growth. And it was like, whoa, that's a lot of growth. From the 5th to the 17th percentile. Hello, the child is still going nowhere.
Right.
Okay,
but
so
they'll call that progress.
Explain to me what growth you're project, you know, like, so if you're putting goals on this IEP, you're obviously not creating the goals by truly estimating a projected goal or projected growth, which is what you should be doing, right? If you need to get this child to grade level, if this child is at a kindergarten level, but they're going into 5th grade, we can calculate the rate of growth that they're required if they've been collecting any kind of progress monitoring data. Now, if they're required to collect things like MAP data yearly, we've got progress monitoring data. They don't want to call it that.
We do that in Georgia. Well, certain districts. MAP testing the data. And they do that projection, like you said, like they're projecting your child will be here.
Yes.
We started that in 1st grade. Yeah. Here in Georgia, and for my son, the projected and the art, like I'm like the RIT score and all. I'm like, do you guys even know what you're doing? You know what any of this is? No. But the funniest thing about that, though, Renee, is that it also not only identifies a child's weakness, but it'll also identify a child's strength. And yes, this is what irritates me, is that your kid can be like all the way down here with the reading, would be all the way up here with the math. Yeah. And then they just want to like kind of shoo you along, like, oh, they did great. And then they don't even want to bring up like 2E or anything. I'm like, hold up. So you're saying my kid came down here with the reading, but is that like the 99th percentile for his, not only his grade, his age, his school, his district, and the country? And you don't want to afford me a conversation about this.
Nor do you want to use the information about the strengths with how those strengths might help me choose which intervention my child will respond to in dyslexia intervention, because some dyslexia interventions are more visual than they are more language or rule-based. And so if my child is a visual spatial learner, there are programs such as Linda Mood Bell that are more targeted toward those types of learners. If, however, your child has a lot of verbal strengths and maybe isn't good in math, but maybe is good in calculations, it's a different kind of mathematical talent. But use those strengths to buoy up the weaknesses. They don't talk about the strengths. They put in things like the child was compliant. How does that, how am I supposed to use that to help my child in intervention? My child will just sit there. Wait a minute, it's multisensory. It's supposed to be multisensory. My child will sit there and watch you. My child's supposed to participate. My child is compliant. My child will stare at you. No, wait a minute. My child has an expressive language delay. How will compliance help my child grow toward grade level? Explain to me how that's a measurable strength.
I brought that up, Renee, right at the end of public. And they tried to use that argument to actually kick my kid out of Fort Gillen. Oh, well, he's mastered it, really. I'm like, you have the data to support that? Well, no, but I'm like, so has he actually mastered it, or are you just to the point that you don't know where to go with him now because he's been able to accomplish all of this? Exactly. And you have a class, you have like 4 other kids in the class that haven't. Exactly. So my kid essentially is now being punished. And now you're wanting to kick him out of the thing that actually helped him read. Why didn't you use it that entire time to help him with his dysgraphia? Why going into 5th grade am I just now being afforded a conversation about how we're going to support his dysgraphia with Oregon? Right. He's had it since kindergarten. Right. Right. Get creative. Why are we not instead of just using the program for the reading part, right? Right. Why are we not using it for the dysgraphia? Like, don't try to kick my kid out. Right. Get creative with it.
Right. Right. Well, but for in October, I mean, I know Julie's having like major deja vu at this moment because I think she's having all the same things said to her. But remember in October that my district looked at me and said, we don't have people trained to help dysgraphia, nor do we have programs. So just, we're not going to help your child, despite the fact that he's in 6th grade with a 1st grade written ability. And I just would thank you for putting that on tape, and I'm going to just keep going at this point.
Well, and I finally got my son staffed for some OT because he was in 4th grade. He couldn't even form letters, you know, and or write a paragraph. And I finally got him staffed, and that's about the time the pandemic hit. And, you know, they were sending me, you know, YouTube videos on how to wash your hands or COVID scavenger hunts. And I'm like, well, I'm really kind of concerned about the fact that he can't form letters or write, you know, a sentence or capitalize or punctuate. Now that he's in his new school, which I love, you know, they had 4 years with him at public school to do the right thing. And now he's in his new school within 2 months. Because they use like learning without tears and handwriting without tears. He's writing. I mean, is it where it should be? No, because, you know, I can't expect this teacher to work miracles with him after they, you know, drug him along for 4 years. So, but now he's writing. Now he's punctuating. They allow him to have assistive technology for longer assignments. So he's not just over there, you know, trying to write an essay, you know, with a pencil. So, you know, there's that too.
Wait,
when you do services, they're just not really appropriate all the time.
So can we agree that dysgraphia is like the worst part to remediate? Because it's like, you get your kid reading, right? Like the whole goal when we hear dyslexia, right?
What they don't know about dyslexia, they know less about dysgraphia.
Exactly. So we rush to get the right services in place, right? Goals, objectives, whatever, tutors, all the things. But then we, as their mom and dad or whatever, their parents, even as we're advocating for our kids, we're allowing school districts to say, oh, that's not the hill you want to die on. They've got assistive technology. You don't need that for the dysgraphia or the written expression. They'll be okay. They've got autocorrect. Here, let me throw you a graphic organizer. Let me throw you read and write. Right? Not at any time do they actually show the child how to properly use it, when to use it, make them comfortable using it. So then you get into like 5th grade, 6th grade, and your kid, it is soul crushing. I'm just going to say that. I know this is Dyslexia Initiative, but I'm like determined to make Ashley and Julie and Shantae and everybody make a dysgraphia initiative as well, because the dysgraphia is so soul crushing. Because our kids can sit there and give you a detailed synopsis, right? They can give you the plot, the details, the supporting character, everything. And then when it comes to getting it from here on either on the computer or on a piece of paper, it doesn't matter how high their IQ is. It doesn't matter if they can read. It doesn't matter where they're scoring on their MAPS testing or DEVILS or any of those things, right? They can't do it. It's not just fine motor skills. It's literally 100%. Neurological. It's like they cannot get this down, and it drives them insane. Like I watched my son, right? I watched my son try and do this simple task. He can't figure out how to get the first 3 sentences to grab the audience attention, right? So we all know that marketing, all of these things, but I always talk about this. But then those first 3 sentences, you have to grab somebody, right? And you have to get to the plot, the supporting character, all that cohesive. He can't do it. Even in private school, he's getting better. He's getting better. But it took going to private school just to get him to the point where he can spell without using assistive technology. It took going to private school for him to learn how to use a graphic organizer properly. It took going to private school to get him to use assistive technology properly. Still, he's literally there because his dysgraphia, it's not the fine motor, right? Don't even care about that.
No, it's the planning.
In all my advocating glory, it wasn't the fine motor. It was this to paper. the entire time. And I still beat myself up about that because I was allowed to be talked out of that conversation. I was allowed to be steered away from that conversation. And I literally said in some of my meetings, you know what, that's not the hill I'm willing to die on. I said that, not them, me. I was so convinced that an OT needed to intervene. It wasn't the OT. It was the methodology the entire time. It was how it was presented to my child the entire time. How do you teach a child to get this to paper? Not writing. You have to, and I think that's the big misconception about dysgraphia. But it does cost. What?
I got thrown out the fine motor skills the other day, and I'm like, gosh dang it, you guys just have no clue. No clue. No. It's processing. Right. It's processing, not fine motor.
Mine is exactly this. I didn't, everybody wants to give them AT, and I was all like, let's give them AT. That's great. That's great. That's great. Because I didn't understand written expression. I didn't understand how that was playing in. I didn't understand the disconnect. And by the time I finally grasped all of that, and everybody was going, and I started asking questions, and everybody's like, your son has AT. And I'm like, okay, help me out here. If you haven't taught him how to technically compose a sentence and to technically write a paragraph, how is assistive technology going to help him? It's the same thing as paper and pencil. It's just, he's going, that's not a solution. It's not even a Band-Aid. You're just making yourself feel better here. That's not how this is going to work. And my son has all of the assistive technology, and he writes everything by hand. He doesn't use.
I
actually had a diagnostician tell me that her fiance was dyslexic, and eventually all dyslexic, they just figure it out. They just figure it out with all the spell check and all the help. Yeah, she's also the one who asked me why I was still in the district if I've had so many issues. But that's another conversation. But yeah, because she lives with a dyslexic, and he figured it out one day, she's like, you got spell check, you got this, and you got that. And I said, that's not true remediation. The ability to use assistive technology is not true remediation. You haven't done what you needed to do.
No, yeah. Any kind of remediation. That's just learning to compensate.
Right.
That's just, that's an unremediated dyslexic, just learning to weave through life. That's my husband.
Right. Well, and remember my son's first grade teacher, once he hit the wall and I started asking everybody, do you think he's dyslexic? Do you think he's dyslexic? My son's first grade teacher had the gall to look at me and say, well, I used to be dyslexic, but I'm not anymore. And I was like, I have to leave the room now because I don't want to go to prison for murder today. That's not on my agenda. So I'm bye.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had that happen in meetings where they're like, oh, well, he's making progress. Oh, or he's going to be great. I'm like, and then the OT that was in there taking one for the team because she'd done a private evaluation and she owns her own practice. And she was like, you do know dyslexia doesn't just go away. Just because he learned to read, it's not going anywhere. Right? Please tell me y'all know this. And the room went blank, except for the professionals, the true professionals, meaning the ones that weren't being paid by the district, who weren't employed by the district. All the district representatives were like, I'm like, y'all, man, dyslexia doesn't go away. It's hereditary and it stays there, and you have to keep supporting it. You can't, just because they hit grade level doesn't mean they're going to stay at grade level. Mm-hmm. If you stop supporting it, it's going to stop.
Yeah.
So I've heard that too. And they're like, oh, we just clicked. I'm like, what? It just clicked. Okay.
It'll just click. Well, I went into a meeting for my son just with the teacher, and I described everything I was seeing because I'm like, this ain't my first rodeo. We've been here before. And they're like, well, don't compare. Don't compare, your children, and he's a different person. And okay, so then we, I asked for the data, and they do dibbles or whatever, and he was making progress from the beginning to the middle year, and then from the middle to the end of the year, the teacher came to me and was like, he's still only reading this many words per minute. And I was like, I just looked her in the eyes, like, I tried to tell you, what do you want me to do? I'm not here. I'm not in the school. I can't teach him for you. He's here 6 hours a day. If you're a teacher who knows how to assess a student's reading skills, you should have been able to pick up on that before now. And so that's where I get frustrated, because I'm like, I want to trust the professionals in the room. I want to trust the teacher. We've never really had like some of y'all had some bad experience with teachers. We've never really had any bad experiences with teachers. They were always nice, but my kids were always the good kids. And they also use that against me. Oh, he's just so sweet. And he holds the door, and he helps me out. And he always asks, how can I help you? You're definitely raising him, right? And I was just like, well, thank you for noticing that we do our jobs. No, maybe.
He must not be dyslexic then.
Right. No, yeah, because he's sweet.
Yeah.
Yes, I've actually heard people say that to another parent. Oh, your child's too sweet to be dyslexic. Well, what is that? What does that mean?
or no, when they go around the room and they're like, have you seen that? Have you seen that? Have you? I'm sorry, what? What is my child's behavior or his oh so compliant holding the door and being a team player and a leader and somebody that does teachable moments with the conversation? What does that have to do with anything?
Right.
Nothing. And if anything, you're trying to discredit his OHI. So can we please just pivot off this conversation right now? And Renee, I know you know the same thing. So that's something I do want to touch on and tell parents, because like that's something you have to get addressed inside public school, if at all possible. Get their anxiety and their OHI, everything diagnosed, acknowledged, placed in the IEP, ironclad, 504, whatever your state goes for. I don't know. Because if you don't, I can't tell you how many babies are just like tossed into a realm. And again, I'm not bashing. I'm not saying ADHD is not real, because my child has it, right? Combined type. But his behavior was never ADHD. His behavior was psychomotor agitation as a result of his anxiety and not being supported properly with the curriculum and with his everything. So my thing with parents is that, like, I always try and show parents, and I hate being this, but I hate it. But I'm going to be very honest. I hate showing parents this, and I hate seeing parents break because of me saying this. But I have to rip the blinders off, and I have to show parents the damage underneath for them to really, truly understand and comprehend what is going on. Because the only conversation that's ever afforded usually to parents with learning disabilities, behavior. It's never, well, what's driving the behavior? What is it? Anxiety? Is it OCD? There could be a whole slew of reasons. But what's driving the behavior? Behavior is communication, right? And we've had, I think, like 9 different evaluations done at this point by private vendors. And they all said the same thing. Do not medicate him for ADHD. Do not touch him with a stimulant. That's my child. Because if you touch him with a stimulant, we don't know what it's going to do. It's going to either exasperate it and make it worse, or he's going to shut down. One or the other. Do not touch him with a stimulant. And I was told that in 1st grade and 2nd grade by doctors, by pediatricians, everything. And then the school would still ask me, are you going to medicate him? What is it? Is he taking any kind of medication? Parents, if you're just starting this, I do want to say this. School districts can't ask you that. They're not supposed to ask you that. That's your right to know, not theirs. It's also a violation of FERPA. It's a violation of HIPAA. What you do at home with your baby, meaning to support them outside of that school setting. If you're not comfortable letting the school know, then don't let them know. All right. But what you do need to do is you need to fight for the OHI. I know a lot of parents are like, I'm just happy that my child got identified with an SLD. You need to make sure they're identified properly with the OHI, because the OHI drives all of that. So if their OHI isn't supported, their SLD is worthless. Like that identifier or that qualifier is worthless, because if they have crippling anxiety or crippling panic attacks or even their ADHD or their expressive receptive, if none of that's being addressed, it doesn't matter what you're throwing into the academics, nothing's going to happen. It's not going to get better. And we have so many children that we have to routinely pull out of school, unschool, outschool, homeschool, you name it. We have to keep pulling kids because of that one little thing. Because everybody, their eyeballs get so hyper-focused on ADHD, they neglect to understand the stuff that comes along with it. And I speak from experience only on that, because I thought maybe we'd walk out with dysgraphia and dyslexia, right? I came out with 9 different OHI qualifiers that I never would have known had I not been privileged to have a private evaluation. Sensory processing disorder, CAPD, OCD, anxiety, all of the things, right? And I really do want parents to understand that you have to support them. And that's just like, again, I speak on that all the time, but it's just that we have a lot of kids that are slipping through the cracks because of it. And Renee, you always do a bang up job on speaking on this as well. And you're over there being so quiet. And I would love you.
Yeah, we've had an interesting experience because my son is 9, almost 10. He was diagnosed as dyslexic in 1st grade. We've recently had him reevaluated, and we've come to find out that he was never dyslexic. He most likely has a working memory problem. We're still waiting to find out about auditory processing and a couple of other things. And the reason that he was diagnosed is because the speech language therapist had just started a new school for dyslexics. And so by doing the evaluation that she did, she denied him a comprehensive evaluation that would have identified all of these other things. We already knew some about the sensory processing. We know that he has some convergence issues with his eyes that are affecting some things. He does have crippling anxiety. He has, we thought he had ADHD, but there's questions now about that. So we've had the experience of public school where he was slapped. There was a FERPA violation where the teacher posted ranked scores. Since he couldn't read, he was on the bottom. The reading specialist refused to help anyone read. He was screened for dyslexia before school. In Arkansas, we have dyslexia law, and so he would have been flagged with the characteristics of dyslexia, which was really probably in his case an indication that he had had balanced literacy in kindergarten and was receiving it in 1st grade. And he was a young 6-year-old, so there were concepts he had not been exposed to. The SLP diagnosed him based purely on achievement tests. At the time, I didn't know enough about that, but I've spent the last 6 months immersed in an advocacy case, so I've learned more than I realized I was in store for. 2 months ago, my 9-year-old became suicidal. So I know about, we're homeschooling because it got so bad at his quote unquote dyslexia school, where they didn't accommodate the anxiety, where they didn't provide the OT that they said he was getting every day for his sensory processing dyslexia, where what they told us was below average phonemic awareness, which was average phonemic awareness, where he left after 2 months or 2 years at advanced phonemic awareness and not reading, and where another interventionist was able to get him to read in 2 months. And his self-esteem is to the point where he won't talk to his dad or I. He goes in a room and he locks the door and he plays video games all day. So that's why you vet who you're around, and why you learn your procedural safeguards, and why the next time I meet a woman who is having a baby shower, she won't get the standard baby shower gift. She's going to get a notebook that explains to her IDEA and how to start this notebook from cataloging her entire pregnancy through collecting developmental milestones, so that she's ready long before she ever starts a child, even in a developmental preschool, because she can get an IEP at 3 years of age for that child. Thanks to Lauren, I now know that. Had I known that, then I would have been more aware of some of the flags, because my child had 16 ear infections and 2 sets of tubes, and didn't learn to walk until he was 15 months old, and still has balance problems to this day.
And they can get help even before that, because when I lived in Texas, I worked for ECI, where they can evaluate your kids 0 to 3. And then they hand them off to the public schools at 3. So they can get even earlier intervention.
And my pediatrician didn't tell us any of that. I didn't even know my child had a lip tie. And so we ended up on formula instead of breastfeeding, because my child was starving.
Yeah, that's a whole, like, Renee, everything like that was my son's
experience.
But yeah, his first 5 years, right?
Yep.
And the ear infections, the surgeries, the tongue tie, the all the unnecessary stuff, just because a pediatrician wouldn't listen to mom.
Yeah.
You know, and I kept saying, I'm like, this isn't right. This isn't normal. Nobody smokes in my house. Nobody smokes around my child. Like, why are you?
Exactly.
And, you know, to your point, and I know we've been going on forever, but I do want to say to what Renee said, and I know that Bethany and everybody on here understands this, but yeah, I have a toddler now, right? She's 2.5. And I have her in an early learning academy that actually has curriculum. And watching my daughter, and I know you're not supposed to compare kids, we've already talked about that, but had my son been gifted this school, this curriculum, maybe things wouldn't have been so bad. But to Renee's point, I'm always going to tell new parents, these are the red flags. Start documenting everything from your pregnancy, from their milestones, from anything that your mom gut says, go with it. Mm-hmm. Don't let a doctor talk you out of it. Just do it. And if I just listened to my mother, which she'll probably laugh at, if I had just listened to my mom, I could have saved my son 2 surgeries. I could have saved my son all of those ear infections, because he was allergic to milk. And they kept telling me, oh, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. That was creating the reoccurring ear infections. Nobody told me that. I didn't find that out until he was like 9 years old. But again, early learning, you know, my toddler, she can already say her ABC. She can sing all the nursery rhymes. She can count to 20. She's over here. She's got a pencil grasp like an adult. And it's just night and day difference. And I really do, like Renee said, new parents, if I get invited to a baby shower, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'll be like, here, let me just go ahead and give you this binder. And I'm just gonna section it out for you. And put all the stuff in there because you're gonna need it when you get into kindergarten.
Yep, definitely. And I have a 20-year-old, and the experience was different. And I thought, you know, I was like, I can do this. They're almost 11 years apart. And I thought, I mean, how different can it be? Smacked upside the head with reality. Different child, different. I mean, and he was anxious from birth. The child stroked my hair, would not allow anyone but mom, dad, and grandparents to hold him. And yeah, I mean, but, you know, you look back and it's like, how could anybody be around him that is mandated to know the signs? How could they not know? And so now when, you know, to be in a meeting when you're sitting there and somebody questions IDEA and and they question how it is that we know it and doubt whether or not we're relevant because we aren't lawyers. I want to say, why the hell don't you know what we know? Because you're mandated to know. You know, if we can seek this information out on our own without the training, and I mean, I say just as moms, but reality check. I mean, look at who we're talking about. We're some smart women. But seriously, I mean, we are reading the law. We're not reading the Cliff Notes. We're reading the damn law. And we're digging deeper into the case law. You know, the SPED directors aren't doing it. And like it or not, reality check, they aren't smart enough. They might think so, but they aren't, because if they were, they wouldn't be hiring the lawyers to do it for them. And they wouldn't be sending those lawyers into meetings like facilitated IEP meetings to intimidate the parents. Because the SPED director would be capable of citing the law themselves.
Here's a fun fact I recently learned about the district bringing in the attorneys. Is those same attorneys that are defending the district against you can be brought in, they can be subpoenaed. So it's a double-edged sword for them. And I just learned that.
Anybody that has been in your child's meeting,
yes,
from kindergarten or whenever you started, all the way out, can be subpoenaed. If you go to due process and any of those people have spoken inside your meeting, even the attorney, they can be put on trial. They can be questioned. They can be asked.
And so they're no longer the attorney of defense. They are now a witness. Bam.
Kind of indicates the intelligence of the attorney too, doesn't it?
Yeah, don't say that loud enough for my district to hear, because the chief counsel likes to go into meetings intimidating parents. So
they can be called in as a witness.
I was advocating for a kid over the phone out of state, and they brought the district lawyer in over, a calculator. Like, mom requested a calculator. And the next meeting, because I was there, they brought in the lawyer to intimidate mom and tell her no. And I mean, I've been in a meeting here where, you know, they asked the LEA, mom asked for an evaluation, and they were like, why you want a WOJO? And I was like, I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, really? I mean, and she Woodcock Johnson is what, you know, the parent had requested. And I was like, a WOJO, okay. But anyways, those are just some fun little stories that I've witnessed and had to share because that's silly, and it is.
Bethany's usually the savage one, by the way. So she's over here being quiet. Bethany, I'm just gonna say, Bethany, when you get her going, she's the savage one. This one, and Renee, and Julie, and Ashley. I'm actually shocked at Bethany. She's been so mild.
I know. So I'm going to add one thing, and then we really need to wrap up because we've been going an exceptionally long time, and we started almost an hour late because thank you, Storm and the state of Texas. I advocated for a child a week ago that has dyslexia, dysgraphia, and I'm going to say it wrong, dyscalculia. And one of the goals for the child was will read word. I mean, and this child is going into 5th grade. Yes, is going into 5th grade, and his math skills are at a 1st grade level. And one of the goals was to do word problems 80% of the time, you know, 2 out of 3 trials, whatever it was. And I went, okay, hold on. Let's talk about the difference between dyslexia, and let's actually talk about what dyscalculia actually is. And you don't have a single goal in here to remediate the child's math, but you want to talk about their ability to do word problems. Let's stick everything in silos. Can we have a goal that just functions on the technicality of math itself and not be talking about word problems, which is associated with his reading ability? And you need goals to talk about rate, accuracy, fluency, and comprehension over here. Let's have a different conversation. And it took almost 20 minutes of trying to convince them and make them understand that they were 2 completely different things and needed to be dealt with in a completely separate manner. And I had to leave the meeting early because I was leaving town. But so I haven't seen the final goal yet from the school, but that was an interest. And I wanted to bring up dyscalculia because we haven't talked about it yet. But having said that, we've been going for a really, really long time. And so we do really need to wrap up. I think we need to do this again at some point though. But I want to thank each of you ladies for joining us today, and especially for putting up with an hour's worth of technical difficulties. Julie and Lauren both trying to troubleshoot from their side since I have no Wi-Fi. My phone is almost dead, and I don't know what cellular data I've used. We've been doing this, but oh well. But thank you for joining us. And I think that this has been really good. And I'll come back, each of you, and we can do this again.
Bye. It was fun.
Bye. Lauren, you have to end it since technically you're me.
You're muted, Lauren.
Okay. And I also forgot to hit the record button. My bad.
It's fine.